says you will be, if you will grant a right of way, we will serve you, and we're going to, so let me make sure you, I didn't write this, but an extraterritorial customer agreement basically says you're not in our city, but we will provide you service, and usually it's at 1.5 times the normal connection fee that an in-city user provides. What this document does is says, it doesn't matter whether you come into the city or not, we will also provide you service, but at the same rate as a city resident. So it's just basically clarifying it's not 1.5, it's the same rate. That's how I interpret this. It doesn't, where I guess it's kind of goofy, is it doesn't specify a number of EDUs. I mean, it doesn't specify any of that stuff. And so that's when I went back to, where I was teasing about the engineer going, if we have capacity, we do, we don't. I mean, you don't get to just say we're going to have 2 units that we're going to join, or 5,000. That provides no predictability there on how you could possibly have a will serve that could do that. Hence why the letters, I'm like, that's just irrelevant. However, if you read the other one, again, all that is saying is, and I'm not going to make you read it again, but I read it, those 2 things in conjunction with one another, that basically says we'll be able to process this, this says will serve, will provide service to you. This one says, that second document says how that will come about. So I believe you could read the 2 together. I don't believe they're in conflict.
So, bear with me here. I'm going to think through what's going through my brain, and if you need to interject. So, okay. I just want to make sure I understand. So, in 2005, it was not industrial.
Right.
It was just land. We'll give Marathon Cheese a right-of-way. City of Mountain Home, you will grant us access to your water and sewer.
Right.
Period.
Without any specification.
Okay, so then we move forward, 2005, 20 years later, whatever, 15 years later, and we annex them in.
With more specificity of how we'll provide that service. Okay,
so I just want to make sure it's not quite driving in my brain as far as he's saying we get to connect to your water and sewer no matter what. This isn't saying you will pay for it no matter what. Did I read that correctly?
You can read both together. If you pay for it, we'll provide it.
Okay, so I'm just trying to work through, it's not like we can take your water no matter what. That's what I'm trying to work through. There's a fee attached to it, essentially.
And this actually says that they'll pay all the fees associated with it, as any other city resident will do, even the letters say that.
Okay. So I'm just trying to work through my
again, these things are, despite them being introduced today, I really don't, I should not have upset the apple cart at all. We're dealing with the merits of the application now. My comment as to Councilmember Harjo and to Taryn's comments, you're both right. I didn't hear anything that anybody said that actually was wrong. About the purpose behind the comprehensive planning document, get that. Buffering doesn't necessarily change the nature, wouldn't violate the comp plan necessarily. The development agreement or the annexation agreement, that has more teeth, because that is a contractual obligation. That's my comments on what I've heard of the 2 of you. You're both right. Nothing that was said was wrong.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. We annexed your property in the ground into the city, right? It was like 283 acres.
400. We took the solar park in as well.
And then.
So phase 1.
Did you pay the 2,000 acre? I don't think you did.
No, phase 1. So you waived that as part of the annexation, as part of the contract. You waived that fee for the first 250. The solar park is a 50-year lease.
Right.
So it's not coming out.
So the 280, wasn't it, or
it was 275, 280.
Yeah, 280.
That's phase 1. Anything further than that, if we go out further, then absolutely.
So we
Ms.
waived
Garvey is right.
your annexation fee of $2,000 per acre.
Water right fee, the annexation fee we paid. You waived the water right fee.
thought it was
The $2,000 an acre is a water right fee.
right. We waived that.
No, yeah, well, we didn't bring, so under this agreement, we have water. Outside of that, if we go to phase 2, which is ground north of the rail that's dry yet, we would have to pay you the $2,000 an acre, or you offered us credits if we would give you the Bennett Ranch water right. We're not there yet. We're not at phase 2. We're just at phase 1, which is covered by this agreement drafted by Joe McNeil.
Right, and so they waived the water annexation fee, so they get the easement, right?
Correct.
Correct. So now, you're saying, I'm gonna de-annex, take my toys, I'm gonna go play with the county, because they'll let me do what I want, and then you're gonna try to take away the easement agreement, which the agreement was that you didn't have to pay the $2,000 an acre, which is, let's just say it's, I'm gonna guesstimate, $560,000.
Correct. So we
So
go
now you're
out.
gonna take it up, but now you're gonna take the easement away, and you still get the water and the wastewater.
Well, you don't have to supply the water and wastewater. The only way we would take that away is if you don't supply it.
So that's what I'm saying, like, I guess that's why I'm confused. How do you get to take your toys and go if we don't approve this tonight, when the easement agreement was tied to that annexation, right? I guess that's why I'm not a lawyer, I don't understand. Like, how can you de-annex and say, we're still gonna take your water, your wastewater, and we'll still be able to hook up to it, but we're gonna do it all in the county?
Because the agreement called for it in the city or the county.
Correct. But doesn't the right of way happen, you just can't take the right of way and make marathon workers pay the $10,000 a trip fee or whatever.
Well, we weren't in the county, we weren't in the city when we signed the agreement.
But I thought that was part of the, we're gonna give you this $560,000 of not paying those fees.
No, there was no discussion about that in advance. It was just, we were in the county, we were gonna develop it in the county. You were the one that talked to me to bring it into the city. Otherwise, we were gonna do it under the PUD-D. You're the one that you and I sat down and talked, and I felt it was the right thing to do, was to bring it into the city. We would waive the fees because the industrial park.
For the tax base.
Yep.
Yes. I'll agree with that.
Yep. That's what we talked about. If the agreement was done in 2005, there was no thought of coming into the city at all. We just had gone through trying to cram the private prison down my throat. I told Joe McNeil I wasn't interested in it. He finally called me at the second to the last day in tears and said, listen, you got to come to Boise, otherwise they're leaving.
Right.
So I did. And Jay had this agreement. We met at Murphy's there on Broadway. I signed the agreement, Nina notarized it. Your police chief zipped off back to Mountain Home with his police car and took it to Marathon, and here you go. You got Marathon, which was the right decision.
Right.
That's totally funded your URA. The benefit of the city has been phenomenal. All I'm saying, and the only thing is listen, we want to come into the city. We've got a good project. Take a look at it. We want to be here. We want to pay the taxes. We'll pay for the water. We don't want to leave the city. But at some point in time, we've got to get drama and politics out of this and give this thing a chance to rise to the top, because at the end of the day, it's a good deal.
Councilman Brennan.
Karen, if I understood you right, you said there was an agreed upon buffer zone, right? And then you said, like, what is a buffer zone, right? Like, how is it defined?
Correct.
I'd like to put a couple people on the spot, not in a mean way or anything, but I'm gonna ask 3 people the same question. Chris, you, and Brenda, what is a buffer? What is the intent of a buffer specifically?
Separation of residential and industrial.
To minimize impacts on adjacent uses.
I'll offer a little more specificity. The intention of a buffer is to take a more intensive use or a use that is less conducive to an adjacent proposed use or existing use, and to protect the less intensive from the more intensive.
So, with multifamily housing, right, it's an allowed use in R4 and C4, conventional and C4. And so in my mind, I wonder, like, it's really the base layer zoning is an R4 for multifamily housing, which is across the street, across West Fifth there. Why do you feel like multifamily housing in such high density is a proper buffer? What do multifamily residents not deserve the same kind of space or buffer that the traditional R4 right below them on the map that they deserve?
Excellent question. So in I-1, light industrial, what are the uses for I-1? As I mentioned, I couldn't disagree more. Residential clearly is a component of I-1, and it's stated. And it uses a much more sensitive, that being senior living, memory care, types of uses, okay, that's outright permitted in I-1. So it would be really defies logic to argue that a multifamily is a more sensitive use and shouldn't be permitted outright. I would say there's a little bit of clumsiness in the ordinance. So the next point is that I believe hotels, which are a residential use as well, are outright permitted. Mobile home parks are outright permitted. So the next point I'll make is, why do I think multifamily is a good use for a buffer? So other uses for I-1 include schools, hospitals, fire stations, police stations, restaurants, retail, commercial, all sorts of businesses are allowed. Not just a factory, not another Marathon cheese, which, for the best of my knowledge, is a perfect fit for an I-1. But look where it's located. Is it close to residential? No. So because we will be building across the street, or we are hoping to build across the street, a suitable buffer would be a higher density. We know it's in demand. You're not going to hear me say, well, the Air Force Base needs housing in the worst possible way, but we do know that we need more housing. That's true in every major market in the country. So Mountain Home is no different. We have plenty of Corey Barton houses, but what's been mentioned before, so I think somebody said 350. I think the average right now, I'm not a realtor, but I believe they're like 420 right now for a 1,1700 square foot house. That's absurd to me, but it's not my business. So
another question for a process question here. So it seems that there's a disagreement amongst us as to water or wastewater capacity. And further down on our agenda tonight is a discussion about lagoon cell number 10 and capacity of well number 17. Is there anything in open meeting law that would allow us to temporarily set this discussion aside so the council can be informed as to the staff update for wastewater? Lagoon cell number 10.
You're asking procedurally whether you can amend the agenda to move something later in the meeting to something earlier because it's pertinent to resolving a material question of this application.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do that. There's nothing that prohibits that. To give a comment, again, I'll happy giving compliments here, but everything that these three said is correct about the buffer zones. That is a buffer. I mean, you don't, where the dirty laundry in Idaho, of course, was the pig farms and dairy farms. And so the question is you create buffers, and, a walking path is not going to separate a pig farm from one single family residence per 5 acre. You would have going from higher industrial or even residential uses to less invasive uses. So that's the definition of what they are. He's not wrong in calling it a buffer. It may not be in line with what you want, but it's, I don't object to the characterization. And I would say so if I did.
Councilman, if the council's so willing, I would be interested in having the staff update on water, wastewater before a decision is made tonight.
Council, are you amenable to doing the presentation by Mr. Curtis first, or do you need to proceed? What do you guys want to do? Sorry, what do you all want to do?
Mayor,
Councilman Brennan?
I'll make a formal motion to set this aside and move on to new business item number 2 and come back to old business number 3.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded. It's all right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Harjo? Aye. Councilwoman Wardwa?
Aye.
Okay. So, we're going to run down to staff update regarding cell 10. So I'm going to let
Mayor, 5 is military liaison position.
No, that's.
no, we're going to skip all that. We're just going to jump down to
We're moving number 2 new business to before number 2 old business. That's all.
So, with that, Chris, do you have a presentation?
So the presentation was in the packets. I did have Keller Associates join us today because obviously they are the engineers that have been most involved in the Cell 10 and the bigger picture of our wastewater treatment facility. So the big things that I wanted to, you guys are welcome to join us. The big things that I wanted to bring up, I want to give just a little bit of the basic facts. We have.
Do you have anything to present on the
I didn't. This is what I have.
I got it.
Yeah. So the big things that I wanted to go over, and they're here with me because they were the ones that were the technical experts that I worked with on this. The big things are, we have a 466 million gallon capacity lagoon system. That's max. In March of this year, we hit 466 million gallons. I know there's been a few people that said it was a wet year. There's nothing saying next year won't be wet. There's nothing saying the year won't. So we have to base our decisions on, I believe, worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is if it goes over 466 million gallons, DEQ gets very angry. So that's the first thing. Our average daily intake is between 1.5 and 1.7 billion gallons. There are some factors that change from winter to summer, but very, very few. Most of the change that we see in the summer is actually water use, not wastewater that comes in. So that number stays fairly consistent. 100% of the water that we have in our lagoon systems is land application. We do not have a rapid infiltration. We don't have any other than what does through evaporation. It's all land application. We're limited on the land application process because we only own so much land. So going backwards to 2023, Keller did provide us with a study for the facilities plan. There was 2 main things that were identified in it that we needed to address for our wastewater system. The first was the PA1 project, which we just finished up. And that was basically what Keller said, this is your #1 problem. You need to be able to get from your north end of town to your lagoon system. So we fixed that. The second one was the winter storage. In 2024, this body made the decision to allow Keller to move forward with planning for Cell 10. And as part of that, Keller was going to assist us with the OLDCC grant in the $10 million range to fund Cell 10. Unfortunately, we did not get that grant. So that was rough. So things we're doing right now for the current land application, we've been in contact with DEQ. We know what our daily application limits are for crop use, and we have spoke with DEQ about what we can apply for non-crop during the grow season. So we have one field out there that we have an unlimited, until it's mud, but an unlimited amount that we can dump because there's no crop growing on it. And that's only during the grow season. Our grow season ends in October and November. Once we get to a point where we are into the mid-November time, we have to stop all land applications. So the goal is, we take in 1.5 to 1.7, we want to be doing 2.1, 2.5 million out. Right now we're doing 2.1. So it's every 3 days we get a day that we can go longer. Right now we're sitting at the end of February, that we have capacity in our system. Some of the things that we're working on, sorry, that just threw me off. Some of the things that we're working on is in our comprehensive plan and working with Keller several years back to 2011-12 timeframe, we've identified the need for aeration. So aeration is just basically putting big pumps in the middle of the ponds and keeping them aerated. The aeration, one, helps the bugs do their chemical treatments. It also helps with the evaporation, and it keeps the ponds from freezing in the winter. Those are all benefits. So the intentions of the Public Works Department is to go out for an RFQ, see if we can get somebody to bid, bring in and do some aeration. That'll be a short-term fix. One of the other things that we've looked at, we know we have stormwater infiltration. Stormwater is basically clean water, and it's being allowed to infiltrate into our systems, and it's hitting our lagoons. So we're treating clean water. There's a couple of things that we're working on now. I'm actually super happy to tell you that today we finished a project where we had a company come in that you all approved, their connectivity services. They've hit 6 of our sewer inlets, and they lined them with a chemical reagent that when it hits water, it foams out and it closes off those sewer systems. So we stopped what we estimate to be 200,000 gallons a day infiltration into our systems from groundwater. That's huge. That's going to be a big, and I anticipate by next week I'll be able to show you the difference. On top of that, we've been working on some of our more, the higher elevated storm